Hi, my name is Kailey Tedesco. I am a poet and a teacher from the Lehigh Valley. I most recently wrote this collection. This is MOTHERDEVIL, which is out now from Stag Publishing, currently nominated for an Elgin Award. Very proud of this collection. Has a lot of themes related to the Gothic, which a lot of my work does, and that is what I'd like to talk about today. So thank you so much to Vanessa, to Radical Beauty Series for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to talk specifically about beauty horror and the Gothic and that intersection. And I wanted to take everyone through my slightly spooky, not really, beauty routine, just like a dark lip lately. So to get started, I'm gonna use this. It's called Blooming Youth. It's vegan peach collagen stick. This is my favorite thing. It smells amazing. So I just sort of like get in there. I've had under eye bags since I was literally born. And fought them, but now I'm kind of not mad at them anymore. But it is nice to have them feel just a little bit soothed, and that is what this does. I'm just kind of let that do its job, soak in a little bit. I should say all of the beauty products, or at least I actively try to ensure that all of my beauty products are vegan and cruelty-free. Big believer in that. I saw a short film actually starring Olivia Munn several years back now, and just kind of illuminated how many products that you wouldn't even imagine, like candles, use animal testing and animal cruelty in order to pass whatever. So I've been working on cutting all of that out. So I'm a big fan of Glossier. I have a lot of Glossier products. So next I move on to sunscreen, where every day, I was a child of the 90s in New Jersey, and sunscreen was just like not really enforced. I think I had like the purple kind that turned your skin purple, and I don't know if it even had an SPF. So I'm actually embarrassingly a little bit new to sunscreen, as in like the last 10 years, not like wildly new. But big fan, makes a big difference. But yeah, I wanted to talk about, like I said, some stuff I'm working on in the realm of the Gothic. I also just wanted to talk about this medium of video. And so I'm going to move on to doing my face. I'm just going to give it a second to settle. Yeah, I actually got really into beauty tutorials when I was very newly postpartum. So I had my son, and he was one of those babies, newborn especially, who is like, if you put him down, immediate, screaming. It didn't matter where. It could be anywhere, even in other people's arms. So he was very much, and I was happy about it, but he was very much attached. So he was very much in my arms all day long, 24/7. And so I remember just kind of embracing this idea of like, okay, I'm going to be glued to the couch. I got my baby. I'll be nursing, all day. If I don't have to go to work, this is where I'm at. And, I binged a lot of shows, of course, watched a lot of movies, but sometimes I was just so exhausted that I didn't have the brain space to like take in anything that required, what felt like any kind of critical thought. And then I kind of stumbled into the realm of beauty tutorials, and I loved it. And, I kind of proved myself wrong, because I think there's so much critical thought that actually went into it. And I ended up sort of analyzing the different tropes of what makes a beauty video or a beauty tutorial, kind of getting into the different systemic things that would be brought up in a beauty tutorial, which was really surprising. But the one series that I really, loved and resonated with was actually hosted by the artist Anna Marie Tendler, who I actually met, and I have one of her lampshades. Yeah, she was the host, and I think it was a part of the Amy Poehler Smart Girls series, and she called it The Other Side. And so what she would do is she would have all of these famous comedians come in, and she would do their makeup on one side, usually something very like technically, arduous, so as a way to teach them. And then they would do it on the other side. So they would learn how to do that arduous makeup, whatever it might be, on the other side of their face. And not only that, but as they were working through it, they would talk about the other side of the veil. So they would talk about paranormal activity and belief in ghosts. And it ended up being this really cool, funny, compassionate, just really neat breakdown. I really, really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the transference of like beauty advice between these two individuals. And I loved the talk of obviously the paranormal and ghosts. And I think that beauty is so intimate and vulnerable. And talking about ghosts is also really strangely intimate and vulnerable. Like, I'm someone who talks about it all the time. But I think there's a level of like security that you need to have with a person before you go up to them and are just like, hey, do you believe in ghosts? And let's talk about it. So yeah, I really, really appreciated that in the video. And in the multiple videos, as many of them. And I got into other beauty influencers as well. An account, Tess Christine. I still follow Tess. We actually, she doesn't know this, but we had children at the same time, for the first time. And so navigating things like postpartum depression and anxiety, and even just like those micro things like teething, all of those steps along the way. It was cool to have, these weekly videos or monthly sometimes videos where you can just be like, okay, this is someone who's going through what I'm going through, and they're going to sit down and do their makeup and talk about what they're going through. So I found it, really therapeutic, and it became one of my major, coping mechanisms with both, like I said, exhaustion, but also just new motherhood, new parenting, postpartum, everything going on. And I think ultimately it gave me a sense of a permission where, there's so much of this narrative of shame instilled in parenting, and I think especially in new parents. But to see these other, people sitting down and taking this time to take care of themselves, I started to really, put that higher up on my priority list as well, and just take that 20 minutes. And I still find it ultimately to be very therapeutic and calming to just sit down and go through my makeup routine. It's pretty much the same thing every day if I'm leaving the house. Sometimes I don't do it at all if I'm just staying home. But it's just nice to have that time to be with your thoughts. I don't listen to music. Sometimes I drink coffee while I do it. But it's just me and my thoughts. So I really, really blended at this point. Okay. And so next, I take, this is Milk Makeup. I don't really know what I'm doing with contouring, but I give it a shot. Just to sculpt a little bit. I had my makeup done before my wedding. It was actually just at Sephora. It was like they do it for free, and then they just want you to buy the products. But it was really helpful, and they gave me so many cool tips, and this sort of light contouring was one of them. So I really appreciate that. I took that with me. I think it's cool that we kind of have like these treasure chests when it comes to like self-care and makeup and skincare. This kind of mental like just chest of secrets that are imparted. It's almost like folk tales, like, this will do this if you do this a certain way. So yeah, I'm working on this project right now. Actually just finished it, just putting finishing touches on it, polishing it. But my good friend, Dr. Mav Tahat, and I are editing an anthology on body horror. And so I am working on this piece where basically, I'm going to do powder next. I'm writing about the ways that in Gothic lit, in film, and in horror, specifically oftentimes in Gothic horror, we see the reflected self as something within the realm of the abject. And I'm really fascinated by that. And I think, a lot of images come to mind. One that I pull from immediately in the essay is Disney's Snow White, in the magic mirror, where literally, the reflection in the mirror for the queen is not the queen at all. It's something completely other. And it's this, being telling the queen, how she looks or how she compares or whatever. And I think that is really interesting to look at psychologically and just as like an inner voice. I'm definitely someone who, I have OCD, and one thing that I find myself obsessing over, I also have struggled with different things with body image and things like that over the years, but I'm always obsessing, like if I post a picture on Instagram or if I'm on a Zoom call, I catch myself getting stuck in these thought loops of like, not what do I look like, but what do I look like to other people? And I need to know how they're perceiving me and what they think of this picture, or whatever it might be, which obviously I have no control over. But that I think the Gothic exploits that lack of control, and that's the point. There's so much about our image that is taken, and sometimes in ways that are totally neutral and sometimes in not so neutral ways, but our image gets taken and exploited, and we don't have that control. We should there should be more to kind of protect us from the different patriarchal concepts, misogynistic, racist, all of these different things, transphobia, all of it, that distorts the ways that we might think about ourselves and our self-esteem. But yeah, I just really, got into that with Snow White as this kind of, almost like an origin text, but then going into other things as well, like looking at the scene in Jennifer's Body, which always sticks with me, where she is, fully demonic and applying her foundation in the mirror, and you just see kind of like a portion of her face in the mirror, and she's slathering the foundation over because it's like this recursive action. And then similarly, there's this V.C. Andrews text, part of the Castile series, where Heaven, the protagonist of that series, walks in on her grandmother after she has basically been traumatized, and she is just continuously applying like cake after cake after cake layer of makeup onto her face, and that goes on. She's not really revisited in the series, so for all we know, that goes on for eternity. And so these images of makeup and this way that we kind of try to reclaim or take control of our image, in the Gothic, so often we see these characters, again, positioning them in that realm of the abject, and through this reflection, seeing something monstrous, but what really is monstrous is all of the systems that kind of place us into those positions in the first place. And so I also write about the substance, which I love, and that very just absolutely eat your heart out devastating scene of Demi Moore getting ready for a date, and applying makeup, and working on getting ready and going, and more time goes by, and she just can't tear away from the mirror, because she just can't get her image to match what maybe's in her head, but more likely is in the head of society, and so she's really struggling to get everything to match up. And that scene is so devastating, and I think so resonant because of how many people probably have experienced that, and I definitely have as well. Just seeing the self as something you want to distance yourself from, your reflection is something you want to distance yourself from, but at the same time being unable to do that, being so kind of connected. And I should say connected to that idea of what you feel like you should be, or how you think you should look, or what others are trying to find, within you. But then I do write about Monstro Eliza Sue, and who I just absolutely love, and the kind of freedom and liberation that she experiences from all of that, as well, and just the beauty of her, putting herself together in the vanity and feeling beautiful and feeling safe, in her image, because she's looking at herself and she's seeing herself. She's not seeing what other people see or what she thinks other people see, and I think there's such power in that. Usually just like a kind of dark color at the crease, but yeah, I think in addition to these texts based in the Gothic and based in horror, where you have the mirror and the reflected self as such a trope, of course is going to bring me to Bloody Mary, who, you know, I definitely grew up conjuring. I was the person at the sleepovers that was like, okay, it's time, let's get together, and we got to call on Bloody Mary, everybody. And, you know, I grew up still invested in the legend and trying to kind of pinpoint why it is that was so compelling for me. And in a very like Mungo-esque way, I think, you know, the ultimate through line of Bloody Mary is that the fear of that person, visage appearing in the mirror, entity, whatever, is that it's actually yourself, that you're seeing yourself in the future kind of reflected back to you. And, you know, that's scary just psychologically for a lot of reasons. But it also makes me think of this Zelda Sayre Fitzgerald quote from Save Me the Waltz. And I love this quote, but I have to write it down because I'm just going to paraphrase it. I don't have it, you know, in front of me. But basically, you know, the protagonist in Save Me the Waltz is being criticized for looking in the mirror over and over again. And that is kind of, it's interpreted as this act of vanity. But she says something along the lines of, you know, it's not vanity. It's not looking because I like what I see. It's looking because I want it to change. And that always stuck with me. And I think that kind of ties into so many of those texts that I had just mentioned as well. I'm really into a 90s eye. So I like to do a little bit of like darker eyeshadow on the bottom lash line too. So yeah, I you know, I think that that's something that's really stuck with me. And I've thought about things like my own family and, you know, the relationship to beauty and to care that I've seen, you know, in my grandmothers and my mom and my aunts and my sister and my cousins and all of us kind of, you know, growing up. And I think, you know, that fear of change is definitely instilled of, you know, not wanting to age and not wanting to, whatever other things, you know, might happen, that ultimately just come down to like this fear, you know, the way that the world paints it, and the kind of agenda that's pushed on us by patriarchy, this fear of just like literally not being a kid anymore. But I've also seen like such beauty and transference in all of those people I just mentioned, in the ways that we kind of share with one another in beauty. And I have these vivid memories of watching my grandmother do the rosary at 5 a.m. and then sitting down to do her makeup at the kitchen table. So just really, really gorgeous things. Or I did my sister's makeup for prom. My cousin ended up doing my makeup at my wedding. And so I think, you know, I'm trying to personally, this is like just a daily thing that I work on. I try to sit down in front of the mirror and think, okay, this is about devotion to care and not about disassociating from the self, not about seeing something in the mirror that isn't me. And I think, you know, through thinking about all of those gorgeous memories, I'm able to kind of get a little bit closer to that. And I hope I can instill some of that, you know, for my son as well in his relationship to care and beauty as he gets older and grows up. Okay, I've seen this sentiment on the Radical Beauty series a few times now. Never done a wing on camera. Let's see how it goes. Not awful, but not my best. I think everyone has, you know, everyone who has like a kind of frequent skincare makeup routine probably has that one thing that just makes them feel like them. Like you put it on and you're just like, okay, I feel kind of centered in myself now, like soul, body, all of it's like matching. That's winged eyeliner for me. Like I hope when I die, I hope if there is an afterlife of some kind and there's some kind of embodiment, that whatever embodiment I take on has winged eyeliner, I'll feel like myself. I've actually never done makeup in a camera before either. I usually am in a mirror, so I'm fully in camera right now. So I don't know, but not the worst. So then I just do some mascara. I used to be the kind of person to open my mouth when I did mascara. Now I think I like raise my eyebrows really high instead to compensate for telling my body to not open my mouth. So just the eyebrows go way, way up. So yeah, powers that be, let my ghost have winged eyeliner, please. So I'm going to do some lip liner. I like lip liner because it's usually a little bit forgiving, and I just sort of blur it out anyway. And then I'm going to do cheeks, do Glossier Cloud Paint, which has been like a science to figure out how hard to squeeze it because it comes out so fast, every tube that I've ever owned. So much of my makeup I think I apply with my fingers. I do a lot of blending with my fingers. Of course, I wash my hands before. I have brushes, but I'm not like always on top of getting new brushes and things like that, so fingers it is. I like to take some extra and put it on my lips. But yeah, speaking of ghosts and winged eyeliner, I think like the dead girl motif and trope comes up in Gothic literature a lot. Going back to my Pretty Little Liars days, my sister and I, we used to have like this pact, which is so morbid and messed up, but that if one of us passed, we would be in charge of the others. This is like so Betty Draper too. In charge of the others, just the whole deal at the funeral, like what we wore in a casket, how our makeup was done, what pictures were shown. And I guess that pact is ongoing, I don't know, but we haven't spoken about it since the Pretty Little Liars days. But I think that, you know, also stems from so much where we see like the dead girl, and we see the motif of like haunting the narrative, this Laura Palmer, you know, all of these women kind of come back, and their images now projections in the minds of usually men, and you know the ways that they are dressing them up in their minds, and the ways that they're appearing to them and what they're saying to them, and you know so much agency is lost through that, and I think that's so often exploited in the Gothic, and something really fascinating to me too, something I often explore in my work. This is a lip stain I just got. It's NYX Lip IV, and I'm new to the realm of lip stains. So you kind of let it sit for a minute and then you wipe it off. But it works nice. It does a good job. Okay. I let the lip stain sit. I went off camera for a moment, wiped it away. Just going to do finishing touches. I like a dewy look, so I've been using Glossier Future Dew for a while now. Just do a teeny bit of it on my cheekbones. And then just some perfume, body oil technically. This is a French perfume that smells like Scottish moss. And I am lucky to have been to both places, and I love them both, so it just seemed like a perfect match. A little bit of fluffing everything out, primping. That's my look. Thank you so much, Radical Beauty Series. I loved talking about all things Gothic and beauty. Please follow me at Kailey Tedesco to hear me go on more about it. And again, my books, 3 of my books, most recently MOTHERDEVIL, are available at whitestagpublishing.com and also Asters and Books. Thank you so much.